Welcome to Co-Creation and Critical Thinking, Empowering Students with Generative AI Tools session. This session is being recorded. To turn on captions during the session, click three dots at the top of the meeting, click on Language and Speech, then turn on Live Captions. For more information on live captions, please visit Microsoft's support page. My name is Mandy Mayak, Director at the Wisconsin Technical College System Office. Please share any questions that you have in the chat. Resources and recordings will be available on the WTCS Faculty Summit site. Our goal is to have recordings and resources uploaded within the next week, and you will receive an email when these resources are available. As we get started, let's take just a moment to review the session expectations. We ask that you listen actively and be in the room. We ask that you bring your curiosity, ask questions, be curious, and we ask that you balance by taking space and making space for all of the thoughts, ideas, and conversations that we'll have tonight. Please, again, feel free to share your questions in the chat, and we will address them at the end of the presentation. We do have Q&A time built into the end of the session. And then also at the end, we'll be putting a link to an exit ticket in the chat, asking for brief feedback on the session and encouraging you to share one action step that you want to take based on the information that was shared. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to our presenters, Dr. Nancy Chapko and Dr. Meg Hunter from Gateway Technical College. Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. We are going to start with a Padlet activity, and I'll let you go ahead and share that. We'll put the links also into the chat.
One moment. I'm working on sharing your presentation. Just a
okay,
second.
Great.
Sorry.
That's okay. Here is the shortened URL for the Padlet, and we also are going to have a QR code. If you click the link, what you're going to see is a map of Wisconsin with the WTCS schools, and we'd like you to put a pin or a sticker next to your school so we can kind of get an idea of who's in the room. On that Padlet, you're going to see that there are two pins where Nancy and I both work for Gateway. So we thought we would share that with you as well. QR code is now on the screen as well as the tiny URL that we gave you. I don't know, Amanda, if you can click on and get to the URL or not, but we could then see, oh, we've got people adding to the map. I can see it on my other screen. Oh, this is so fun. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you all. So can you get that? Can you?
I want to see it too.
You don't see it?
No.
Well, I'd love to share it with you, but I can't. I don't have that power.
I know.
Oh, thank you. There we go. There's our map. Yay! Yay! Thank you all for playing along.
Yes.
So if you haven't played with the Sandbox product, it's one of the Padlet products that you can add different things to, and there's a whole variety of things. And you can also restrict the tools that people have access to. So thank you all very much for that. I'll also put the link to our slides in there as well. Yes, I love Padlet as well. I use it all the time. There you go.
Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining Dr. Meg Hunter and me to talk about empowering students with generative AI tools, particularly with the perspective of constructivism, co-creation, and critical thinking. Meg and I both work for Gateway Technical College. We have instructional design backgrounds. Meg, she'll tell you a little bit about herself, but she is responsible for providing training and education for new faculty. So she's had a lot of opportunity to teach FQAS courses and to try out a lot of different kinds of techniques and has recently integrated a lot of AI kinds of activities and thinking in that. We're going to sort of contrast that, if you will, with a different student population. I'm an instructor of business pathways courses, and the students that I teach are the more traditional college students. So whether it's a faculty student or a college student, these are our experiences are quite the same, and we're anxious to share them with you. We would like this to be a conversation, so feel free to put some questions in chat or comments, and we will try and attend to those as we can. We also wanted to let you know that part of this presentation was AI generated, and that's what you see at the bottom right of this slide, just in the spirit of transparency. So let's move on and talk about our journey. And when we think about using generative AI to enhance learning, the question is no longer should we use it or do we use it, but how we use it. And so we have been experimenting with some sort of experimental kinds of things to support students, allowing them, encouraging them to create their own content, which therefore then fosters critical thinking and enhances their learning process. So again, we'd like this to be a conversation. This is our journey, but please feel free to share your experiences with us. As I mentioned, it's not whether we should use AI in education. Maybe that's a very valuable question, but quite frankly, many of our students are using AI. So I think it is, Meg and I both feel it's our responsibility to teach them how to use it in responsible ways and to use it thoughtfully to enhance their learning. We would think of it in some ways as a learning partner, and we'll explain more about that as we go along here. But really, when we use AI to co-create content, AI does not provide the answers, it provides the input for students then to use that content. And at the bottom of this slide, Meg has linked a really useful article, which talks a lot about it from a much more perhaps academic perspective of using AI integration to co-create content. Dr. Meg?
We're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that our Gateway journey has brought for us. But I want to talk about something that we're really excited about that just started this fall. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the AAC&U program on AI pedagogy and curriculum. Well, we were selected to be a part of it, and it's really helped us move Gateway forward because it's caused us to develop more resources. We are now starting to put together drafts of AI competencies to embed in the Career Essential competencies. And I think, Nancy, that's something maybe you could talk to as well. We're dialoguing with leadership about recommendations. And something that, again, that we're just in the midst of is environmental scans of uses with AI. We partnered with our institutional research group, and we're getting information from K-12, employers, peer institutions, as well as we just finished a survey of employees as well as Gateway students, and that the one with our students was also put together with the entire system. So some of your students may have taken the same survey. Nancy, did you want to talk a little bit about the college's Career Essential competencies?
Yeah, the career essential competencies are what we all know as employability skills, right? The things that employers tell us that our students must or should know how to do once they graduate and enter their chosen occupations. And part of our work with AACU has been very informative in that we decided not to create an additional set of standards, if you will, those being AI standards within the institution, but rather we looked for places to embed them or house them in our existing standards. And they fit quite well in our essential career competencies, employability skills, because so much of what we do prepares students for work. And so we, on the recommendation of much of the support and literature with AACU, we came up with 3 different competencies and we place them in our respective technology, critical thinking, and I believe the other one was maybe communication. So they live in existing set of standards, and that is that is what we're going to go with in this next semester. So questions about that, and maybe where have you put yours?
Got a question in the chat, Nancy.
I do see that. Can someone please clarify the distinction between AI generated content for students versus, yes, okay. I did. I referenced that. I said when we ask students to co-create using a generative AI model, what we're asking them to use is content that AI has produced for them to do some work versus AI simply providing an answer. Like, for instance, a student might go to AI and say, what was the date that World War I started, or something like that. Well, that's very factual, and that information can be provided by AI, but there's really no learning that goes along other than now we have a date that we know is accurate. What Meg and I are going to be talking about is how to co-create content using AI that causes the student then to engage in further critical thinking. And it is quite different then from just using AI to return an answer, the correct answer.
Does that answer the question? Go ahead, anybody else? No problem.
So the distinction would be students then take that AI generated content and do something themselves with it. Yes. And we have a couple examples of that, actually some concrete examples that we'll share. Yes.
All right. So a little bit more about our journey. We started in 2023, I think I was trying to get the date right, with a voluntary group of faculty. It started out with about 50 faculty that we got together, obviously, as best we could with as many people who were interested. But we were trying tools, we were sharing classroom experiences. So faculty were really exchanging ideas about things that were going on in their classrooms that concerned them, and also things that they were trying with their students to see what was working. And then in 2025, we moved to the AAC and U Institute, and that's where we invited a group of faculty from across the college to be a part of that committee and a part of that experience. And that has led us then into some subgroups. We now have a Boodlebox pilot group, that people that are trying the Boodlebox product, and we have it for, I think, 8 months total. Mm-hmm. We also have subcommittees on faculty usage, and these are all volunteer committees, faculty usage and training. We also have an environmental scan, so when the data comes back, we'll have a group of us that are going to be analyzing that data. We're looking at technology and infrastructure and student uses, as I mentioned. And we're also going to have, moving forward in the spring and next fall, AI listening sessions to find out more about faculty concerns as well as student concerns about AI. So that's sort of our plan moving forward. As Nancy mentioned early on, I teach a course called Creating Interactive Learning Environments, which is a course that has all the FQAS standards in it. And in that course, faculty design online and blended units of instruction. And I thought that was really going to be a perfect opportunity for faculty to be able to use AI. As we all know, oftentimes people that come in to the technical college system don't have teaching experience, but they have a vast knowledge of their disciplines. And what bringing AI into the FQAS course has done is it's really leveled the playing field for a number of those instructors, because they get the foundational information. They understand what it is we're looking at in terms of teaching methods. I think that might even be the next slide. So these are the different pieces that we talk about in the course, and they experience it at the course in our live Zoom sessions and online. And then they understand that when I talk about active learning or scaffolding or collaboration, personalized learning and reflection, that they've experienced it, and then they have the vocabulary to use in prompts as they move forward in the course. So that's kind of the framework with which we have operated with AI, and it has been incredibly fascinating to watch. I had some gentlemen in my course this semester who are coming in from the trucking industry. They're teaching our trucking courses, and they have vast experience in trucking, and this has really helped them understand more about teaching. They know the things to ask. They can develop units of instruction with the help of AI, and it's just been wonderful to see. This is a sample of part of what I talk about in the course. They create a unit of instruction, and I obviously have them use AI. And I want them to experiment. I want them to see what happens. But one of the most important pieces of that is how to use AI and how it helps or hinders their process. They need to really be thinking about all these different components. And we model it and do it during the Zoom session, and then they do it on their own afterwards. And a big component for me is that we incorporate UDL, where they can write it, they can record it, they can do a video, they can do a visual, whatever way they want to, but I really want to understand their process. Now, I do want to point out, back on this other slide is a link out to the reflections that I used in that course. So if that's of interest to anybody, you're welcome to take a look at that. So I'll want to pause and ask if anybody has any questions before we move on, or Nancy, if you have anything you want to add.
Nope. Good work. The feedback that we've received institutionally with the implementation of AI as tools in the class Meg is talking about has been uniformly positive.
All right.
So we thought we'd share some resources and examples with you, because it's great to talk about this stuff, but when I go to presentations, I like to see what can I do with it. So we've linked up some resources here, and at the very top are some tips and techniques for teaching that Meg has carefully curated through a lot of her teaching, her research, etc. And I think she just threw that in the chat. Feel free to take a look. It's sort of an assortment of high quality, I would say, resources. And then beneath that, I have provided some, what I think of more as examples or samples, if you will, the kinds of things that will help you when you design assignments. And one of them, the human and AI cognition model. And I don't know if I open this where I go. Yeah, so if you take a look at that, what you'll see is what we already know, right? Humans do some things very well, and AI does some things very well. And we should think about, as we design assignments and assessments and learning activities, what does AI do particularly well that maybe we can offload? And there are a number of things. AI can list for us, it can summarize for us, it can retrieve information faster and more readily than we can. What do we do as humans best? We critique, we design, we evaluate, we do all of those things. And so what we're suggesting here is to find opportunities to use these new tools, these AI tools, to develop assignments. Sample questions, statements, stems, paired activities, etc. This is all Bloom's taxonomy stuff, which makes all the sense in the world. But sometimes it's easy to see them in play, right? What would that look like? What might I ask a student to do? And what could I expect of them as an outcome? A product, an activity? And I have some very specific examples here that I aligned with certain occupations: accounting, communications, culinary, dental, HVAC, and math. And those are extensions of something that I'll talk about here in a moment. But these are examples of how you might ask students in these particular programs to co-create content, very specific to their what they're learning. There's an AI interview example, nothing fancy here. It's a hey Jen, but sometimes students don't like to speak in class, but they might be happy to record a short video. This is free, a photo or an image, a script or recording, audio recording, and off they go. And then That's the AI-powered video generation. I'm going to talk a little bit about this AI interview example. So these are some resources for you to take a look at your convenience. But you know, it all comes back to our foundation, which is constructivism, right? When we're talking about learning happens through experience, through reflection, through our own agency. And it's the same process, it's the same foundation, but now we have a set of new tools, if you will. And AI, in this case, becomes a catalyst for deeper engagement, which can help shape, critique, and refine the output, but it does build genuine understanding. Questions about this, about the constructivism and the tools? We know that students enjoy, and we know that they learn effectively when they're engaged in doing, when they're hands-on and engaged in meaningful tasks. And that is something that the AI can help us with, to put those tools in their hands, if you will, and allow them to generate content or critique or explore multiple viewpoints, generate a presentation. So if a student uses, in this case, in the example, a tool to help generate a presentation or explore multiple viewpoints on an issue, one might say, well, you know, that was AI generated. But you know what? They're not just consuming that knowledge. They're actually making decisions, making adjustments, and they're deciding about making something their own. And that's where the co-creation exists. That's where that critical thinking takes place.
Did I move ahead too fast?
Sorry?
Did I move ahead too fast?
Let me see. I think we're good. I think
good.
we're good. Yep,
Excellent.
we're going to do okay, and now we're going to do scaffolding. So we go here. Okay.
Scaffolding is one more. Let me go one more. There you go.
Okay, so we're at scaffolding. That's where we belong, correct?
Yes, it is.
Scaffolding works really well because it is dynamic, which means it can adjust to specific or individual learners' needs. And some students will have more knowledge, more experience with certain topics. Some students will have less. When we use AI tools, we can sort of customize it, if you will. We meet students where we are. We provide them with that opportunity to scaffold where they are. It works really well. So let's look at this practice that's shown here. A student uses AI to generate an essay outline, then revises it and personalizes it, learning structural principles more effectively than with templates alone. In other words, there's an assist here for sure, but you know what? The student is then taking that product and making that product his or her own by revising it and personalizing it. That's where the ownership comes in. This is where the critical thinking happens. Okay. So I want to make sure that I am where I think we need to be, and we are. This kind of says everything in the presentation. If I would have to say, what are you talking about, Nancy? I would say this is it. So collaboration, co-construction of knowledge, right? It's, if we think about it, our generative AI tools, they really parallel or mirror the best parts of collaboration. A student will initiate by question, prompt, or share an idea with an AI tool. That AI tool will respond, provide questions, suggestions, alternatives, refinements, and now the student has to make a decision. The student can evaluate the information, they'll make an adjustment, they might backtrack a little bit here, they might refine, but they take the time to critically assess this before moving forward. And that's what we're taking a look at here. I think one of the nicest features I can think of, at least as I've been using them, is the dialogic process. And I want to be clear here, this is not peer-to-peer interaction. I would not tell you that that's what's happening here, and you know that, but it sure does mirror it in a good way. Students in some ways feel, I think, empowered, maybe less timid in some cases, about asking questions or seeking feedback or having that conversation with a tool. It's an exchange of ideas. It's articulating their thinking. It's helping them to see alternative perspectives, which they can choose to ignore, accept, or refine. And I see in chat, Mary says, love scaffolding, anything that decreases cognitive load. Absolutely. That's where I'm going with this. Let's let AI do some of the heavy lifting that maybe our students don't need to spend a lot of time with. Any feedback, questions, thoughts about this particular content? So I do like the personalization that AI tools afford students. They are in control. They are initiating that contact. They are responding to whatever the AI responses, prompts, et cetera, might be. And they have autonomy with this. They can take it as far as they want. They can take it as basic as they want. And I've seen this in some of my students' work, and I've been really very, very pleased. Students seem to enjoy this part of it. This truly is personalization where advanced students, they will take this, they will run with this. Those students who aren't quite maybe as confident or they don't have the same experience, they will progress through at their own level. And it's okay if we reach that learning goal. That's what we want to do here. They're pursuing understanding or learning, engaging in ways that are meaningful to them individually.
And I think if we talk a little bit about personalization, the other thing that it can do is explain this to me as if I know nothing about the topic, or I'm having difficulty with this particular topic. Can you re-explain it to me? I didn't understand when the professor was talking about it in class. And I think that takes it back to personalization. Sometimes it might take something from the textbook and say, okay, bring this down to a different reading level so it's easier to understand. That's one of the ways that faculty can use it as well.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to make 17 different kinds of guidelines, which is terrific.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Here's your example.
Here's my concrete example that I've used, and I've had interesting results, good results with this. And this is an example of a collaborative assignment, learning activity that I've used in class, and it is a simulated interview. Because I teach a business pathway class, that this makes sense in my world. But what I'm suggesting here is you could simulate an interview with any seminal figure from your occupational discipline, if that's what you choose to do. Any AI tool, generative AI tool, will provide this kind of platform for you. There's nothing you could use any tool of your choice. So in this activity, students were told that or invited to conduct a simulated interview. For those who don't know, this is an early management theorist, and we wanted to get an idea on this gentleman's take on present day management theory. Management as a science is still fairly young, and this gentleman had long and lasting impact on even present day management practices. So the goal of this for the students, why they're doing this, is to explore what this person had contributed years ago and say, is this still really essential given, the pace of technology and virtual work and all those, and globalization? I mean, certainly these kinds of strategies and policies that this gentleman had recommended years ago, they couldn't possibly have a great deal of meaning. Well, they do. So the instructions were here to prepare and ask 5 interview questions. And my experience has shown that anything less than 5 doesn't really get you much with students. They need to have a little bit more practice. So 5 is good. 10 is perfect. Anything beyond 10 gets a little wild and is, in my opinion, unnecessary. The questions are theirs. They prepare the questions as long as they're specific, thoughtful, and directly related to the purpose, which is above. And then they present their interview as a conversation. So they initiate it, right? We've talked about that. And they ask one question at a time, and then they respond accordingly. So they initiate the interview, and your AI tool will know who your person is and will respond accordingly. And at that point, with every response, the student takes the opportunity to critically analyze, to evaluate, to refine, to adjust, to go in another direction, to pursue that particular topic, maybe with greater detail. So this is the activity, and it's dialogic, right? Because they are, again, not speaking to a peer, but they're having a back and forth exchange. They're having to evaluate the knowledge that comes back at them. Do I want to use this? Is this going to get me, to fulfill the purpose of this assignment? Or I need more information about this. And they could do more questions if they have to, but there's a minimum. At some point, they end the interview, they know they need to do that. They need to save that. So I would see the prompt, I would see all the questions, I would see all the responses. And then the second part, because there's always two pieces, is a reflection. And the reflection is important because think through how this experience that you just engaged in might have added value to what you know about the origins of management as a science and an art type of a thing. They're actively engaged. They are making meaning. They're thinking critically. They personalized it, and they're having that exchange. The personalization to me has been quite interesting as an instructor because I have had students who have embraced this, and it reads like a real interview. Highly interesting. And I've had some students who aren't quite comfortable with the technology or the purpose, and they are much more reticent about it. They still achieve, I would say, the goal, but they don't necessarily embrace the tool in the same way. They perhaps haven't had the opportunity. So I've used this approach a number of times, the interview, not the same topic, but the interview, and I'm struck each time I use it at how students enjoy the activity. They feel like they've learned something. We talk about starting your own business and talk maybe how you're going to market it, those kinds of things, and they can go in many different directions with this. They seem to enjoy the assignments. They feel as if they've learned something. They feel empowered. It's highly individualistic because I'm not necessarily grading or evaluating based on what their interview questions were, unless they're way off base. And it's just something that as an instructor I've started to explore and think this is really working. They're getting it. They're creating their knowledge. What's missing here is it's not necessarily assignment that says, tell me who Henri Fayol was. When was he born? What did he do? And do you think what he talked about 120 years ago still makes sense? There's nothing wrong in an assignment of that nature, but this just takes it just an entirely different dimension. So that's been really a successful.
Right. 13 here.
Questions about this? Are you doing something like this in your classrooms? Or what are you doing in your classrooms?
I will now.
I believe that folks can unmute themselves. I think we've had a few folks unmute here and there. So if you have something to say, you should be able to chime in now.
One of the other things I want to say about this whole interview thing, as I mentioned, any generative AI tool can be used, but look to your LMS because most of the LMS now have this kind of an interview feature as part of its AI function. So you wouldn't even necessarily need to go beyond your LMS, and that's even better because then you can set up the whole assignment rate within the LMS, have it graded, and so on. Works well. Okay, Leanna can't unmute myself, but maybe she has a question, so let's take a look. Leanna, did you have a question before we moved on?
Scenarios in chat.
I recently had some students do a scenario. Okay, in nursing.
The bathroom.
Yeah.
Excellent examples.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
There you go.
All this. Would you know what? I hope our chat is shared because I would like to save some of these. I think all of this would be very useful. So we're on the same path here, right? Many of us doing these kinds of things, trying to figure out how do we use AI as the tool, right? Right. Okay,
yeah, and
Leanna,
I
if
think
you
one
want
of
to
the
take me out for.
Go ahead.
Leanna wants to take me out for coffee. Take Meg too. We're happy to. Okay. All right.
I think
Yeah,
one of the other things I was going to say is having students compare the output from different LLMs, I think is important as well. I think that when I'm working with faculty, one of the things they're very interested in is to see how the outputs are different, how they respond to questions differently, even with the same exact prompt. And also sometimes there is a struggle to figure out what is the best LLM to use, and that can help determine those kinds of things.
right,
And
right,
many of them obviously want to use the free versions, so
right.
that's important too.
Right. And again, if you have this feature in your LMS, it's a given. You don't even need to worry about those things. And sometimes when students start out, they're a little intimidated by the tool and the cost and am I using it the right way? So all good ideas. So this next piece, Megan, I want to talk about is really building your assignments because we've talked about building your AI integrated kinds of things and um, assignments. This is no different than everything we've been taught, right? Think about FQAS teaching methodology and maybe what it was before we had FQAS. These are sound principles. Identify what you want students to know or do, right? That's the first thing. Then we would suggest that the next step is define AI's role. So this part right in the middle here now, I would say maybe go back and look at that infographic that we provided, or any other source that talks about AI versus human interaction. Where can AI do the heavy lifting where the students don't need to list or summarize? Maybe they were just going to be given that. So where's AI helpful? What do we want our students to do? Make sure that you require transparency. So students need to document their AI interactions. They need to explain how they used and evaluated all suggestions. And when I use that example I just mentioned about the interview, that's only half the assignment. The other half is the reflection, which you could term differently. But really what I'm saying is, how did you use and evaluate this information to come up with, our Henri Fayol's practices and principles still relevant today? And they are, and they could see that. So that transparency is important, and it also puts the human element back in to the AI process, and that's important. And then assess the process. Meg and I are big on this. We're in agreement that we're looking at the decision making and the analysis, not just the technical correctness all the time. This will vary from occupation to occupation. We get that, but they're learning how to use this content to make decisions, to engage critically, and that's what we want to be looking at. So we think that AI is it's a preliminary resource to be expanded upon by students. It's not an answer giver. It's a preliminary resource. It becomes the input that your students will use. And design assignments where the AI output is the starting point, not the finish line. So I'll use that interview again. The AI output that we got from the interview was actually the point at which the student engaged critically to think about the purpose of the assignment. And that's how we want to assess. This particular slide you can find in the resources we shared. Here are some examples, and I think this program here you can select. Is kind of lays out by an occupation how you might do this. And I'm looking at HVAC, and I work with the gentleman as the instructional designer in our college on this a lot. And so how can they co-create content? Step-by-step diagnostic and repair manual. Refine and validate against real equipment. Here's where the student engagement is. Analyze, apply, evaluate, co-create, and justify. It's at the Bloom's level of applying, analyzing, and evaluating. And if you look in the shared resources, you'll see where I've also indicated the constructive alignment occurs. So these are suggestions, and I'm sure you've seen some, but it's really the same design, if you will, but it's sort of imposed on different occupations in slightly different ways. Questions about any of this?
I'm going to put the link to the program information in there into the chat as well.
Great. So it's all about the reflection in my mind. It's about asking students, and Meg, we're firm on this. And Meg, I would suggest that you might even encourage this to a larger extent in your work with new faculty, that think about why you're doing what you're doing and what you can do next with it. So the next time around, the students that I facilitate have an interview experience with AI, they're going to do it somewhat differently because they've learned about that. They've reflected on that experience. They will approach it somewhat differently. How would this look, Meg, with new faculty?
The way that I have the course scaffolded is we have a live Zoom session where we will do a lot of these activities, where we'll look at a course outcome summary, we'll look at the competencies and the learning objectives and say we'll design a module around this or a unit around this particular competency, and they will look at this in a group. And then after they look at it in a group, then they will then do it on their own, which I think is what I want them to do, is they build their skills. But it's that analysis, whether it's in the small group or it's on their own, that I think is so important, and refining it and working together to refine it in the small group, and then being able to do it on their own because they've got the confidence to do it.
So our recommendation for you, start small, be intentional, and focus on student agency, their engagement. And I think when we do that, as we're designing assignments, that it moves us that much closer to sort of a human-centered approach to using AI. So we've got a few things here in chat. Thank you, Suzanne. That's very gracious of you. And I'm not sure. Leanna would like to talk about the work in her field.
I think we can take this opportunity, unless Meg or Nancy, unless you have anything to add in conclusion, I think we could make this transition to a Q&A session.
Absolutely.
I know, Liana, I believe that you had wanted to share something previously and you weren't able to. We didn't have the unmute function quite turned on yet. So if you would like to chime in now, please do. And then any other folks, oh, it's not working for you? Let me check again. I apologize. I thought I had it worked out here, but maybe not.
If not, you're welcome to type your questions in the chat too, whatever works for people.
Yeah.
Or even outside of the presentation. Meg and I are always happy to talk about designing, teaching. Yeah.
How about now, Liana?
Meg, Mary has a question about, do we have any favorite AI resources for building assignments? We do. Do you want to address that?
Well, I'm struggling here to find a favorite, I guess. I think part of what I'm discovering the more I'm using AI is it depends on what I want to do and what discipline I'm in, if that makes sense. And I play with different prompts and different, I'm fumbling here, Nancy, help me out here.
So what is that magic something or other? That will give you lesson plans. But really, any generative AI tool.
Yes. Yeah, well, yeah, you could put it.
Magic Bus.
Magic Bus is one. You can put it into Conomingo. Padlet TA has one. But honestly, my favorite is probably using it in LLM. I really lean on Perplexity a lot. That's probably one of my favorites to use. Sometimes I'll use Chat. I do not use Chat 5.0. I don't like it. I'll go back to 4 many times over, and I also will dialogue with it, and I'll say, no, that's not quite what I'm looking for. I'll ask it for alternatives, more ideas.
I would second Meg's Perplexity. I find it to be very education focused. I like the resources it gives me so I can do the checking I need to do. That works well. I see that Diane has asked, have you experienced any resistance from students using AI? I have. although it's lessened over the last year or two. What I think is important to do is to honor and recognize their reason for the resistance. I've had some even push back a bit. But
Mm-hmm.
if you are able to tie the activity to a purpose very solidly, like the interview kind of a thing, they start to see its utility, how it can help as a learning partner, as opposed to this is doing something terribly bad. I am careful that I don't necessarily make these assignments high stakes or even frequent at this point. I think in time that might happen. But I do think it's important to recognize everybody's perspective.
I do also want to add, when we're talking about tools, is that Gemini has had lots of shifts and changes, just I would say in the last month. Much better than it used to be.
So I see a question, what is LMN? And I think I must have
It's an
said something.
LLM. Yeah, large language model. Yeah.
Sorry, between that and LMS.
Yeah, I know, we're all. Yeah.
Hi, this is Liana. I think I did get my mic to work.
Yay!
But I had
Excellent.
so I'm sorry, I'm also very sick, so I'm I shouldn't talk for long, but I had typed a big blurb earlier in the chat there. It's just that, I think where I get stuck, although in general I realize, of course, my students are using AI. Unfortunately, in the field I teach in, what I see too much of is they are using AI to cognitively offload everything to the
Mm-hmm.
point where I cannot teach them what I'm supposed to be teaching them.
Mm.
So, even as I wrote that blurb earlier in the chat, I realized that if I believe in my field, this is true, that learning how to craft a summary of your own, via your own brain power, that is that is critical thinking. You have to think critically in order to craft a summary, because you have to
Absolutely.
read the thing and then you have to choose, what am I going to put in? What am I going to
Yeah.
leave out? But that doesn't mean that I can't use AI to help my students learn how to summarize. And so that's the kind of thing that I would want to take you out for coffee for and pick your brain about. So anyway, but I just wanted to second what Suzanne had said. This is your presentation has really made me think, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great.
Okay, now I have to mute myself. Okay, here we go.
This is Suzanne. I'm sorry. I figured I would just unmute. This really has been a great presentation, very helpful. I still don't like the fact that I really feel like I'm grading AI in discussions and I'm not grading students. I don't know how to address that. I'm not asking you to address it, but you've given me so many more ideas on how to use it in other ways besides, and it would also satisfy RSI, right? That we need to make sure that we're doing in our online classes. So seriously, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I don't know if you have the option for video in your LMS, but we have the option for video in Brightspace. So sometimes I will have people respond on video or in audio rather than writing it out, and that sometimes can help with some of that.
That's a good idea. Yeah, we do have, I know that we do for faculty. I'm assuming we would for students as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's also great for feedback.
Seriously, I loved this presentation. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Fantastic. Could I ask Dr. Chapko and Dr. Hunter, could you possibly share your contact information in the chat? I know
sure.
you've shared your presentation slides as well. Thank you so much for that. But if you wouldn't mind dropping your contact information in the chat, I think people would probably love to have that information. I want to just take this last moment to thank our presenters. It's apparent that people really found a lot of value in this presentation. So with that, thank you, Dr. Chapko. Thank you, Dr. Hunter.